Today I'm taking a look at the McFarlane Toys Fidgetal Stephanie Brown Batgirl. Spoiler alert, I'm a little bit conflicted. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and it's that colorful digital box. Digital logo in one corner. Speaking of logos, the DC logo's been updated. Names and logos down here, along with names on the spine. Stephanie comes from the current Batgirl's comic. If you're looking for her in-store, here's the UPC. And then on the back we have some full-scale artwork. Recent waves pivoted to just having characters cropped onto blank backgrounds, but admittedly, I like this much better. For packaging, Stephanie gets 4 points. Moving on to presentation, and at the top of her hair, Stephanie stands at about 6 3/4 inches, or they're about 17 centimeters, and is mostly reuse of Cassandra Cain Batgirl, which itself is mostly reuse of Art of the Crime Batgirl. In Cassandra's case, the only new parts were the head and upper torso, this one designed to accommodate a cloth goods cape. For Stephanie, the only new parts are the forearms, calves and feet, and head. While I'm not going to pretend she's one of my favorites of all time, Stephanie Brown is an interesting character who's been kinda done dirty over the years. Her father was the villain Clue Master, and when she discovered he was a villain, she became the heroic spoiler to spoil his plans and bring him to justice. She had a long-standing romantic relationship with Tim Drake, despite the fact that he never let her know who his actual secret identity was. She would eventually become the first canonical female Robin, but really Batman only did that to spite Tim Drake, and that ordeal was so terrible it led to her having to fake her own death and start over. She took over the mantle of Batgirl during the Batman Reborn era and was actually pretty beloved in the role, but with the New 52, the status quo was restored with Barbara Gordon as Batgirl and Stephanie once again shoved to the side. Now she's just one of several Batgirls in an ongoing Batgirls team comic, with her own identity of spoiler once again being given the heave-ho. While I'd prefer Stephanie to get to forge her own path, I do think this costume is a pretty clever synthesis of all of her roles. The figure, however, cuts a lot of corners. Missing are things like extra thigh straps. Instead of giving her her own belt, they just reused Art of the Crime, though to be fair, at least the pouches on the belt are similar enough. But the bigger issue is that signature ribbing running down the sides of her costume. Here McFarlane just painted lines on the sides of the legs, but didn't even bother to do that with the torso. Granted, it follows the lines of the torso that they used, which is good. And don't get me wrong, you're always going to be able to find some piece of artwork you can point to and say it's accurate to the source material, but what would have been great is if they had given her a figure of her own. What McFarlane did do a great job on, however, is this head sculpt. Pulling down the hood, and there is so much attention to detail. The eyes are perfect and have a lot of intensity, and not only is there a nice wash in the hair, I really appreciate that they went in and painted her hair ties. I would, however, like to draw your attention to this seam around the ear and hairline. I'm kind of wondering if Stephanie was intended to have interchangeable faceplates. Like maybe at some point they were thinking about her being a collector edition. Another great thing about the figure is the cape. The cape itself is a much nicer fabric than we've been getting. It isn't that shiny, crinkly stuff that we get with Batman, nor is it that basketball short material that we get with Superman. And not only is the cape wired, the hood is wired as well, so you can shape it to sit more naturally. Additionally, the hood is actually a separate piece, so there's no trouble moving her head. Nitpicks aside, and all the major broad strokes are there. Don't get me wrong, I would love a proper Stephanie Brown Batgirl. I'd also be happy with just regular old spoiler, and don't even get me started on Robin. But with McFarlane's license running out, this is probably the first, last, and only Stephanie Brown we're going to be getting from him. I cannot speak highly enough of this head sculpt, but overall and for presentation, I'm giving Stephanie Brown Batgirl an okay 3 points. If you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and give it a like, and if you'd like to support my channel so I can make even more content, link to my coffee in the description below. Moving on to Poseability, and as always, Stephanie's head is on a dumbbell joint. Once again though, and this hood is a separate piece, so it has no trouble moving up with the head, or moving down. Even side-to-side tilt isn't a problem. Moving down, Stephanie can raise her arm this high. She gets complete rotation at the shoulder, forward and back thanks to a rotator cuff, and then working our way down the arm, we've got bicep swivel, double jointed elbow with a nice deep bend, and wrist balls that can swivel and hinge in any direction. Shifting to the torso, and Stephanie has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. She can arch back this far, which is just incredible. For context, and here she is standing straight, as always though, and not much in the way forward. She does, however, have a deep side-to-side bend, and of course twist. Below that not entirely comic accurate belt, and Stephanie Stephanie Brown has the standard McFarlane hips. She can kick a little over 90 degrees, this far back, which is pretty good, and gets a perfect split. Working her way down the leg, and she has a really good amount of twist in the hip, double jointed knee with a deep enough bend, toe articulation, and ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and like Stephanie Brown from spoiler to Robin to spoiler again to Batgirl to spoiler again to Batgirl, pivot. As is too often the case, held back only by the limited hunch forward. For Poseability, Stephanie Brown gets 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and this is another area where McFarlane did cut a few corners. First things first, and Stephanie does have a trading card and a figure stand. I will say the logo on the digital stands is pretty colorful, and that does elevate it a bit. She also has a scratch-off code for a digital token of this figure for those who are interested in the digital collectibles. I, however, am not. Beyond that, all Batgirl comes with is the same batarang and grapnel gun we've been getting since Art of the Crime. Now, in McFarlane's defense, she is depicted as having a bat rope on the trading card. Additionally, several recent digital releases didn't have any accessories at all, but in the comics, Stephanie's been wielding a 3-section staff, so it would have been nice if they could have given her that. Heck, I'd have been okay with a reissue of a regular staff we've already gotten. Just something to feel like any amount of thought went into this. As is, it feels like someone at McFarlane just said, what is this, a Batgirl? I don't know, what do we normally give Batgirl? A batarang and a grapnel gun? Good to go. Now, once again, I do want to point out she does have a wired soft goods cape, which I unfortunately cannot say about the next figure in the wave that we're going to be looking at. Starting with her fellow Batgirls, and here's Art of the Crime Barbara Gordon, Three Jokers Barbara Gordon, and Cassandra Cain. That said, for a fellow female Bat person, and here's the Clayface 3-pack Batwoman, and for a fellow purple enthusiast, standard and platinum editions of Huntress. You know, it strikes me that Stephanie's forearms and boots would actually be a lot more comic accurate for Huntress than what we got. And you know what? Yeah, this swap looks great. Obviously you'd have to do a little bit of painting, but you know what? I think I actually like Stephanie's purple on Helena better. If you can find enough extras, yeah, I'd recommend this. On the subject of matching purples, and unfortunately the Platinum Huntress does not match, so if you were hoping to be able to use some of her extra hands, unfortunately that will not work. For Stephanie's most important connection though, and here's Tim Drake Robin. This one's the Infinite Frontier, but labeled as Rebirth, and then here we have Nightfall and the Amazon exclusive. Next up, and for a couple of other Robins, is Page Punchers and Infinite Frontier Damian, New 52 and Dawn of DC versions of the Red Hood, and of course Better Than Batman and Titans Wave versions of Nightwing. Nightwing is a perfect segue to Dick Grayson as Batman and the Dark Knight himself. First we have blue and gray and black and gray versions of Nightfall, blue and gray and black and gray versions of Hush, Three Jokers and DC Rebirth, and lastly, Batman Year One. For a relative scale comparison, here's Stephanie Brown with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here she is with Stealth Iron Man. As long as you display her with large enough versions of other members of the Batman family, Stephanie scales just fine. And of course, there's the wired cape and hood. It might not be my thing, but I know some of you were into the digital token, so I'm not going to knock it. In terms of play value, the only thing holding her back is the lack of Stephanie-specific accessories. And of course, the potential for swappable faces does make me wonder what could have been. Based on what is though, and for playability, Stephanie Brown Batgirl gets 4 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. At $28, Stephanie feels like a better value than other recent releases like Dr. Fate or Two-Face, but I can't help but feel the sharp edge of some of those cut corners. By no means is this a bad figure, but I also know that McFarlane could have done better. What could I say? I guess I'm just a little bit spoiled. For price, I'm giving Stephanie Brown Batgirl 3 points, averaging out to a pretty okay total of 3.6 out of 5. Sound off in the comments below and let me know which version of Stephanie Brown is your favorite. And for more Bat Family videos, check out one of these. Until next time, play nice and have fun. Moving on to playability. Nope.